The crystal being stood before the massive communication array, its body shimmering with desperate light. Ambassador Vexani had never felt fear like this before. In the 3,000 years of his species' existence, nothing had prepared the Kepler Coalition for what was coming. Emergency broadcast to all civilizations. Vexani spoke into the transmitter, his voice echoing across space toward distant stars. This is Ambassador Vexani of the Kepler Coalition. We are under attack by an ancient enemy. The Void Devourers have returned. Our worlds are dying. We need help from anyone who can hear this message. Transmission traveled through space, carrying with it the desperate hope of 12 peaceful species. The coalition had been built on trade, science, and friendship. Their worlds were beautiful gardens, where beings lived in harmony. War was something they had read about in old books, not something they had ever experienced. 3 months earlier, the first reports had come from the Outer Rim worlds. Strange ships had appeared from the darkness between stars. These ships moved like living things, but they were made of black metal that seemed to eat light itself. When they attacked, they drained the energy from everything they touched. Planets went dark. Billions died in silence. The coalition military had tried to fight back, but their ships were built for exploration and peaceful missions. Their weapons were designed to disable, not destroy. Against the Void Devourers, these gentle tools were useless. Every battle ended the same way. Coalition ships floating dead in space. Their crews gone, their energy consumed. Now the enemy was closing in. On the Coalition's core worlds, intelligence reports said the Void Devourers were building toward one massive final attack. They moved with cold purpose, like machines following an ancient program. Some Coalition scientists believe these creatures had destroyed civilizations before, long ago, then gone to sleep in the dark spaces between galaxies. On the other side of the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, the message arrived at a listening post in the mountains of Colorado. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was working the night shift when the alien transmission came through. He had been expecting routine communications from Earth's few colonial outposts, not a desperate cry for help from across the stars. Jake called his superior immediately. Within hours, the message was being analyzed by Earth's best scientists and military leaders. Dr. Lisa Carter, the planet's leading expert on alien life, worked around the clock to decode the full transmission. What she found made her hands shake. The coalition is facing complete extinction, she reported to the Terran Defense Council. These Void Devourers appear to be some kind of ancient weapon system. They consume energy and use it to build more ships. If they finish with the coalition, they won't stop there. They'll keep spreading until they've consumed everything. The council chamber fell silent. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Their longest journey had been to a star system 20 light-years away. The coalition was over 300 light-years distant. It would take months to reach them. And Earth's military was small and untested in real combat. Commander Jake Morrison, promoted to lead the mission, stood before the council. He had served in Earth's last great war, fighting in the brutal conditions of the Sahara campaign. His face bore scars from that conflict, and his eyes held the steady look of someone who had seen the worst that combat could offer. I volunteer to lead an expedition to help the coalition, Jake said. We can't ignore a call for help, especially when our own survival might depend on stopping this threat. The debate lasted for days. Many council members argued that Earth should focus on defending itself rather than getting involved in an alien war. Others worried that humanity's small fleet would make no difference against an enemy that had defeated 12 advanced civilizations. Dr. Carter spoke for the expedition. The coalition species evolved on perfect worlds, she explained. Their data shows they've never faced true hardship. They don't understand war the way we do. Maybe that's exactly what they need: allies who know how to fight when everything seems hopeless. In the end, Earth voted to send help. 5 ships were prepared for the journey: the heavy cruiser TDF Resilience, 2 destroyers, and to support vessels. The crews were volunteers, mostly military personnel with combat experience. They knew they might not come back. Engineer Maya Rodriguez worked day and night to modify the ships for the long journey. She installed new power systems and stronger engines. The ships would need to travel faster and farther than any Earth vessel had gone before. Maya also added extra armor and weapons. If they were going to war, she wanted them ready for anything. Lieutenant Bobby Chen joined the mission as tactical officer. He was an expert in explosives and had a reputation for thinking creatively under pressure. Bobby spent his time studying the limited data about Void Devourer technology. Looking for weaknesses that Coalition forces might have missed, Dr. Carter prepared for first contact with the Coalition species. She studied their biology and culture, trying to understand beings who had never known war. Coalition races were all fragile by human standards. They had thin bones, weak muscles, and nervous systems that could be damaged by stress that humans considered normal. As the small Earth fleet prepared to depart, Jake Morrison addressed his crews. "We don't know what we'll find when we get there." He said the enemy might have already won, the Coalition might be gone. But we're going anyway, because that's what humans do. We help people who need help, even when it's dangerous. The journey to Coalition space took 3 months. During that time, the crew trained constantly. They practiced boarding actions, learned to fight in different atmospheric conditions, and studied every piece of information about their enemy. Jake knew that Earth's ships were outnumbered, but he also knew that humans had advantages the Coalition races lacked. Humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Earth's gravity was crushing, its weather was violent, and its life forms were constantly at war with each other. Every human carried the genetic memory of millions of years of survival against impossible odds. Their bodies were built for extremes that would destroy most other species. Halfway through the journey, they received another transmission from Coalition space. Ambassador Vexhani's voice was weaker now, filled with exhaustion and grief. "Outer worlds are gone," he reported. "The Void Devourers have taken everything. We're falling back to Haven Prime, our last stronghold. If anyone receives this message, please hurry."
We don't have much time.
Jake ordered the fleet to increase speed, pushing the engines beyond safe limits. Maya's modifications held. The ships raced through space toward a war that had already claimed billions of lives. On the final day of their journey, long-range sensors detected the Coalition fleet. What they saw made even the experienced Earth crews pause in shock. Hundreds of alien ships floated in defensive formations around a massive fortress world. But surrounding them, like wolves circling prey, were the dark shapes of Void Devourer vessels. The battle for Haven Prime had already begun. Energy weapons flashed in the darkness as Coalition ships tried desperately to hold their lines. But even from a distance, Jake could see they were losing. The beautiful, graceful alien vessels were no match for the hungry darkness of their ancient enemy. "All ships, battle stations," Jake ordered. "We're going in hot. These aliens, what Deathworlders can do." The 5 Earth ships dropped out of hyperspace directly into the battle zone, their weapons charging, and their crews ready for war. In the Coalition fleet, sensors detected the new arrivals. For the first time in months, Ambassador Vexhani felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. The TDF Resilience burst into normal space like a comet of metal and fire. Around it, the 4 other Earth ships spread into attack formation, their dark hulls gleaming with weapon ports and armor plating. The sight confused both sides of the battle raging around Haven Prime. Admiral Zephyr Colthan commanded the Coalition defense fleet from his flagship, the Gentle Dawn. His forearms moved gracefully across the control panels as he tried to coordinate the retreat of his battered forces. When his sensors detected the unknown ships, he felt his 3 hearts skip in unison. "What are those vessels?" he asked his tactical officer. The ships on his screen looked nothing like any Coalition design. Where Coalition ships were smooth and curved like flower petals, these newcomers were angular and aggressive. They bristled with weapons and moved through space like predators hunting prey. "Unknown, Admiral," replied the tactical officer, a nervous being whose species resembled tall, thin deer with large eyes. "They're not in our database. Design philosophy is completely alien to us." Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Resilience, watching the battle unfold on the main screen. Coalition ships moved in careful formations, firing precise shots at the dark void devourer vessels. But their enemies adapted quickly, their hull plating shifting to absorb the energy weapons. For every void devourer destroyed, 3 coalition ships went dark. Communications, hail the coalition flagship, Jake ordered. Let them know we're here to help. The response came quickly, transmitted in broken English that the coalition had learned from intercepted Earth broadcasts. Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Colthan of the Coalition Defense Fleet. Identify yourselves. This is a restricted battle zone. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force, Jake replied. We received your distress call. We're here to help you fight these things. There was a long pause. Then Admiral Colthan's voice returned, filled with confusion and hope. Terran, you're from the 3rd planet in the Sol system. The Death World. Jake raised an eyebrow. Death World. That's a new one. Yeah, we're from Earth. And right now, people are getting slaughtered out there. Request permission to engage the enemy. Another pause. Longer this time. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Colthan was staring at his biological scanner readings. The newcomers were human beings, creatures from a planet so hostile that Coalition scientists had classified it as uninhabitable. Yet somehow these impossible beings had built starships and traveled across the galaxy to help. Permission granted, Colthan finally said. But be warned, the Void Devourers adapt to any weapon we use. They'll learn from every attack. Jake smiled grimly. That's assuming. They can survive the attack long enough to adapt. All ships, weapons free. Show these ancient machines what happens when they mess with our friends. The Earth ships accelerated toward the Void Devourer formation with a speed that made Coalition observers gasp. No rational captain would charge directly at superior numbers, especially at velocities that would turn any collision into mutual annihilation. But the humans weren't being rational, they were being human. Dr. Lisa Carter had worked frantically in the Resilience's medical bay, setting up equipment for both human and alien casualties. Her first priority was establishing communication with Coalition medical personnel to learn about their biology. What she discovered amazed and horrified her. Jake, you need to see this, she called over the ship's intercom. I've been analyzing Coalition biological data. These beings are incredibly fragile. Their bone density is about 1/3 of ours. Their muscle tissue can't handle rapid acceleration. And their nervous systems are so sensitive that the stress, hormones we produce during combat would actually kill them. On the Coalition flagship, Dr. Nira Veltara was conducting her own analysis of human biology. Her large, gentle eyes widened as she studied the readings. The humans registered as living creatures, but their physical specifications seemed impossible. Admiral, she reported in a trembling voice, these beings have redundant organs. Their skeletal structure is dense enough to survive impacts that would crush us. Their muscle fibers are designed for explosive power rather than efficiency. And their brain chemistry, Admiral. They're producing combat stimulants that would be fatal to any Coalition species. Admiral Colthan watched the human ships dive into the enemy formation. The lead vessel, which the humans called the Resilience, took a direct hit from a Void Devourer energy beam. The weapon that had been destroying Coalition ships barely scorched the human vessel's armor. How is that possible? Colthan whispered. Dr. Veltara checked her readings again. Their ships are built like their bodies, Admiral. Layers of redundant systems, armor designed to absorb punishment, and power sources that can handle massive overloads. They're not just from a death world. They've brought their death world with them. The battle changed the moment the humans joined the fight. Lieutenant Bobby Chen led the Resilience's weapon systems, targeting Void Devourer ships with a combination of kinetic projectiles, energy beams, and something the Coalition had never seen before, explosive missiles that released clouds of metal fragments. The Void Devourers are trying to adapt to our energy weapons, Bobby reported to Jake. But they can't figure out our kinetic rounds. Our armor is designed to absorb energy, not to stop solid projectiles moving at high velocity. Captain Sam? Parker prepared his Marine boarding teams. His soldiers were encased in powered armor that would allow them to survive in the vacuum of space. This was routine for human military forces, but it seemed like magic to Coalition observers. "Sir, we're ready to board enemy vessels on your command," Sam reported. "The lads are excited to get up close with these things." Admiral Colthan heard this transmission and felt his blood turn cold. "Commander Morrison, did your captain just suggest boarding Void Devourer ships? That's impossible. No one has ever survived inside one of their vessels. The environment is instantly lethal." Jake's voice carried dark amusement. "Admiral, humans come from a world where the environment tries to kill us every day. Our Marines have trained for combat in vacuum, toxic atmospheres, and crushing gravity. If these Void Devourers want to see what lethal really looks like, they're about to get an education." The first human boarding action began when the destroyer TDF Defiant locked onto a damaged Void Devourer vessel. Sam Parker led 20 Marines through the breach, their armor sealing automatically as they entered the alien ship. What they found inside would have killed any Coalition being instantly. The Void Devourer's ship was filled with poisonous gas, crushing gravity 3 times Earth normal and radiation levels that glowed on their instruments. The corridors were designed as death traps, with sudden pressure changes and temperature extremes meant to kill any boarders. "This is actually pretty comfortable," one of Sam's Marines commented over the radio. "This reminds me of that training exercise we did in the Mariana Trench." Sam led his team deeper into the ship, following readings toward what appeared to be the command center. The Void Devourers had never faced boarders who could survive in their ship's hostile environment. Their internal defenses were designed to kill through environmental hazards, not direct combat. When the Marines reached the central chamber, they found something that shocked even them. The Void Devourers were not organic beings at all, but artificial intelligences housed in mechanical bodies. They had been built by some ancient race as the ultimate weapons, designed to consume and adapt. "Command, this is Parker," Sam reported. "These things are machines, not living beings. Old machines, but sophisticated ones. They're having trouble understanding how we're still alive in here." The mechanical beings tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed for the energy-based combat they had always known. Sam's Marines used simple projectile weapons, explosives, and when necessary, their armored fists. The ancient machines, built to counter logical tactical decisions, could not adapt to the chaotic human approach to warfare. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Colthan watched his sensors as the Void Devourer's ship went dark. For the first time in the entire war, a Coalition force had successfully captured an enemy vessel, except it hadn't been Coalition forces. It had been the impossible warriors from the death world called Earth. "Dr. Veltara," the Admiral said quietly, "I think we're witnessing something unprecedented. These humans don't just come from a hostile world, they've learned to be more dangerous than their environment." The human ships continued their assault, using tactics that defied everything the Coalition understood about space combat. They flew through debris fields that should have destroyed them, used gravitational forces as weapons, and coordinated their attacks with a precision that spoke of extensive combat experience. As the last Void Devourer ships in the system retreated into hyperspace, Jake Morrison opened a channel to the Coalition fleet. "Admiral Colthan, this is Commander Morrison. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Request permission to come aboard your flagship for a proper first contact meeting." Admiral Colthan looked around his bridge at his crew of gentle, peaceful beings. In one day, they had witnessed impossible warriors from across the galaxy risk their lives to save people they had never met. His voice was filled with gratitude and awe as he replied. The Coalition medical bay aboard the Gentle Dawn had never seen anything like the human boarding teams returning from their mission. Sergeant Rita Walsh led her squad through the airlock, their armor smoking from radiation exposure and scorched by energy weapons. To the Coalition medical staff, they looked like they had walked through hell itself. Dr. Nira Veltara rushed forward with her medical scanners, expecting to find dying beings who needed immediate care. Instead, she found Rita Walsh removing her helmet and shaking out her dark hair as if she had just finished a routine training exercise. "That was fun," Rita said to her squad, "though I have to say, those machines pack a punch." Johnson, how's that burn on your arm? Private Johnson rolled up his sleeve to reveal a wound that would have killed most Coalition species. It's just a scratch, Sarge. The armor took most of it. I'll slap some gel on it and be good to go. Dr. Veltara stared at the injury. The human's skin was already beginning to heal itself, forming new tissue at a rate she had never seen before. This is impossible, she whispered. That level of cellular regeneration should not exist in any biological system. Rita noticed the alien doctor's distress and tried to be reassuring. Hey, don't worry about us, Doc. We're tougher than we look. Humans have been getting hurt and healing up for millions of years. It's what we do. Meanwhile, Chief Petty Officer Tony Kim was working with Coalition engineers in the damaged sections of their ships. The aliens watched in amazement as Tony performed repairs that should have required specialized equipment and protective gear. He welded hole breaches in the vacuum of space, working with tools that generated temperatures hot enough to melt Coalition bones. How are you doing that? Asked Engineer Fluxamar, a crystalline being whose species communicated through light patterns. The radiation levels in that section should have killed you instantly. Tony paused in his welding and looked back through his helmet visor. Killed me? This is just background radiation. Should see what we deal with near Earth's poles during solar storms. Now that stuff will give you a sunburn. He returned to his work manually installing armor plates that Coalition robots could not handle due to the hostile environment. Tony's modifications were crude by Coalition standards, but they were incredibly effective. The patches he welded could withstand forces that would crush normal Coalition materials. Your people's approach to engineering is very different from ours, Fluxamar observed. We design for efficiency and elegance. You design for survival. Tony nodded as he sealed. Another breach. That's because where we come from. If something breaks, you fix it fast, or you die. We don't have time to make it pretty. In the Coalition Command Center, Admiral Colthan was reviewing battle reports with Jake Morrison, the human commander. Sat in a chair designed for beings much more delicate than himself. The furniture creaked under his weight, and Colthan worried it might collapse. Your boarding teams achieved something we thought was impossible, Colthan said. In 3,000 years of Coalition history, no one has ever successfully captured a Void Devourer vessel. How did your people survive inside those death traps? Jake looked puzzled. Death traps, Admiral. Those ships were pretty comfortable compared to some places we've fought. The gravity was heavy, sure, but nothing worse than what our deep sea troops train in. Toxic atmosphere was annoying, but that's what sealed suits are for. But the radiation levels, Colthan protested. Our instruments showed exposure that would cause immediate organ failure in any Coalition species. Radiation? Jake shrugged. We get more exposure than that flying through Earth's magnetosphere during solar flares. Our bodies are pretty good at handling that kind of damage. Evolution is a tough teacher, but it prepares you for a lot. Dr. Lisa Carter had set up a temporary medical station in the Coalition Medical Bay. She was treating both human and alien. Casualties and her methods were causing quite a stir among Coalition medical personnel. When a Coalition pilot was brought in with what the aliens considered fatal injuries, Lisa went to work with techniques that seemed brutal by their standards. You're cutting directly into the patient, Dr. Veltora said in horror. Where are the healing rays? The cellular regeneration fields. Don't have those, Lisa replied, her hands steady as she worked. But I don't need them. Sometimes the old-fashioned way works better. This pilot has internal bleeding, and I need to stop it now before we lose him. She worked with instruments that looked primitive compared to Coalition medical technology. But her results spoke for themselves. The pilot not only survived, but began recovering faster than any Coalition doctor thought possible. Your surgical techniques are so aggressive, Dr. Veltara observed. How do you know you won't cause more damage? Lisa paused to explain while her patient stabilized. On Earth, we learned medicine in a hostile environment. People got hurt badly and often, and we had to develop ways to save them quickly. Sometimes you have to cause a little damage to prevent a lot more. The Coalition medical staff watched in fascination as Lisa taught them human first aid techniques. Methods that seemed violent and dangerous actually proved highly effective for emergency treatment. Within hours, Coalition medics were saving lives they would have lost before. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Bobby Chen was analyzing the captured Void Devourer technology with Coalition scientists. The mechanical systems were incredibly advanced, but Bobby approached them with a practical mindset that confused his alien colleagues. "These adaptive shields are impressive," Bobby said, studying the enemy technology. "They can adjust to counter any energy weapon we throw at them. But look at this, they're not designed to handle multiple different attack types at the same time." "What do you mean?" asked Chief Scientist Crevel, whose insectoid species had developed advanced theoretical physics. Bobby grinned. "Simple. We hit them with everything at once. Kinetic rounds to crack the armor, energy beams to overload their power systems, and explosives to finish the job. They can adapt to one threat, but not three different ones hitting simultaneously. That seems very chaotic," Crevel said uncertainly. "Our combat doctrine emphasizes precise, efficient attacks." "Chaos works," Bobby replied. "The enemy expects logical, predictable tactics. When you throw random destruction at them, their programming can't keep up." As the Coalition fleet prepared for the next phase of the war, word spread through the alien crews about the incredible humans. Stories were told of Marines who fought in environments that would instantly kill Coalition soldiers. Engineers who repaired ships with their bare hands in the vacuum of space. Medics who saved lives using techniques that seemed impossible. Private Danny Brooks, the human field medic, found himself constantly surrounded by curious Coalition beings who wanted to understand human physiology. They were particularly fascinated by his medical kit, which contained supplies they had never seen before. "This chemical compound," said Dr. Veltara, examining Danny's pain medication, "would be fatal to most Coalition species, yet you inject it directly into your bloodstream." Danny nodded. "Yeah, morphine is pretty strong stuff, but human pain tolerance is higher than most species can handle. Sometimes you need serious medicine to deal with serious injuries. And this," she held up a small device, "combat stimulant. Injector," Danny explained. "Keeps you fighting when your body wants to shut down. Increases reaction time, suppresses pain, boosts adrenaline production." Dr. Veltera almost dropped the device. "This would cause immediate cardiac arrest in any Coalition being. The stress alone would kill us." "Different worlds, different solutions," Danny said with a smile. "Where we come from, sometimes you have to push your body past its limits to survive." The real revelation came when human combat footage was shared with Coalition tactical analysts. The aliens watched in stunned silence as human soldiers fought in conditions they had believed were unsurvivable. Battles in crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, and radiation fields that glowed on their instruments. "They don't just survive in these environments," reported tactical analyst Mirith. "They thrive in them. They use hostile conditions as weapons against their enemies." Admiral Colthan realized that the humans weren't just powerful allies. They were living proof that survival was possible in a hostile universe. His own people had evolved on gentle worlds where comfort and safety were assumed. The humans had evolved in a place where every day was a fight for survival. "Commander Morrison," Colthan said during their next planning session, "your people have shown us something we never understood before. We always believed that intelligence and technology could overcome any threat. But you've proven that sometimes the will to survive is more important than any weapon." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Admiral, every species faces challenges. Your people developed incredible science and built a peaceful civilization. That's something to be proud of. We just developed different skills because our world demanded them. But now our peaceful civilization is threatened by something our science cannot defeat," Colthan replied. "We need to learn from you. We need to understand how to fight when everything seems hopeless." The emergency council meeting took place in the largest chamber aboard Haven Prime's orbital station. Representatives from all 12 Coalition species gathered around a holographic display showing the galaxy's current situation, red zones marked. Worlds that had gone dark, consumed by the Void Devourers. The display showed a terrifying truth: over half the Coalition's territory was gone. Ambassador Vexahani crystalline form flickered with nervous energy as he addressed the assembly. "Long-range sensors have detected the main Void Devourer fleet. They are massing in the Darkness Nebula, building something massive. Our scientists estimate they will launch their final attack within 2 weeks. The chamber filled with the sounds of despair from a dozen different species. Gentle beings who had never known war faced the reality of complete extinction. Some wept. Others simply stared at the display in shocked silence. Colonel Frank Stone stood at the back of the chamber, his weathered face studying the tactical situation. His human uniform looked out of place among the flowing robes and elegant garments of the coalition diplomats. When the room fell silent, he stepped forward. "With respect to the council," Frank said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had led soldiers through impossible battles, "sitting here and waiting for them to come to us is suicide." Admiral Colthan's forearms gestured in confusion. "What alternative do we have, Colonel? The darkness nebula is impassable. The gravitational storms alone would crush any ship that entered." Frank smiled grimly. "Admiral, that's exactly why. We need to go there. The enemy isn't expecting an attack through terrain they consider impossible to cross. On Earth, we have a saying, when your enemy thinks something can't be done, that's exactly when you do it." The coalition representatives exchanged worried glances. Dr. Veltara spoke up, her deer-like features showing deep concern. "Colonel Stone, the darkness nebula contains collapsed stars, radiation storms, and gravitational fields that shift without warning. No ship has ever survived passage through that region." "No coalition ship," Frank corrected. "But human ships are built different. We design for survival in hostile environments because that's all we've ever known. Commander Morrison, show them the modifications Engineer Rodriguez has been working on." Jake Morrison activated a new holographic display showing human ship designs. The coalition representatives gasped at what they saw. The elegant Earth vessels had been transformed into something that looked more like armored monsters than starships. "We've reinforced the hulls with overlapping armor plates," Jake explained, "added extra power generators, and installed gravitational deflectors based on technology we use for deep ocean exploration. These ships can handle pressure and radiation levels that would destroy normal vessels." Navigator Helen Price joined the presentation, her confident demeanor a stark contrast to the nervous coalition officers. "I've been studying the nebulas patterns for weeks. The gravitational storms follow predictable cycles, and the radiation bursts can actually be used to mask our approach. What looks impossible to you looks like good cover to us." The coalition council erupted in debate. The idea of voluntarily entering the most dangerous region of known space seemed like madness to beings who had evolved on safe, peaceful worlds. But slowly, some of the younger coalition officers began to see the logic in the human plan. Captain Zixandra of the Krydak species was the first to speak in favor. Her insectoid features showed determination as she addressed the council. "Humans are right. We cannot win by playing defensively. My people have been studying human tactical manuals, and we believe this aggressive approach might work." Over the following days, Colonel Stone began training coalition ground forces in human military tactics. The training sessions were held in the station's cargo bays, converted into makeshift boot camps. The sight of peaceful aliens learning to fight was both inspiring and heartbreaking. "The first thing you need to understand," Frank told a mixed group of coalition trainees, "is that sometimes you have to accept losses to achieve victory. I know that's hard for your people to hear, but war isn't about perfection. It's about survival." The insectoid Krytak soldiers took to the training better than other species. Their natural coordination and hive mind communication gave them advantages in team tactics. Frank watched with approval as they practiced flanking maneuvers and coordinated attacks. "Good work, Warrior Clickthur," Frank said to one of the Krytak squad leaders. "Your people have natural instincts for this kind of warfare. You think as a unit, not as individuals." Clickthur's mandibles clicked with what Frank had learned was pleasure. "Colonel Stone, we have never known combat, but something about your methods feels ... correct. As if we were meant to fight alongside humans." The other coalition species struggled more with human training methods. The gentle deer-like Velterans had difficulty with aggressive tactics, while the crystalline Vexani found it hard to think in terms of causing harm to others. But they kept trying, motivated by the knowledge that their species faced extinction. Private. First Class Alex Murphy worked with a group of young coalition beings, teaching them basic weapons handling. At 19, Alex was the youngest human in the expedition, but his easygoing nature helped put the nervous aliens at ease. "Don't be afraid of the rifle," Alex told a young Velteron named Neuron. "It's just a tool like any other. The important thing is to respect it and use it responsibly." Neuron held the human weapon with trembling hands. "Alex, my people have never held instruments designed to cause harm. This feels wrong to us." "I get that," Alex replied gently. "But think of it this way, you're not learning to hurt people. You're learning to protect them. Sometimes the only way to save lives is to stop the things that are trying to take them." Meanwhile, Navigator Helen Price was working with coalition pilots, teaching them evasive flying techniques that seemed impossible by their standards. The coalition had always flown in straight lines and gentle curves, optimizing for efficiency and comfort. Helen was teaching them to use gravity wells, asteroid fields, and radiation storms as tactical advantages. "You're flying like you're afraid of the environment," Helen told a group of coalition pilots during a simulation. "Stop thinking of space as empty void to cross, and start thinking of it as terrain to use. That asteroid field isn't an obstacle, it's cover. That radiation storm isn't a hazard, it's a way to hide from enemy sensors." Coalition pilot Mirzak struggled with the concepts. His bird-like species had evolved for smooth, efficient flight. Navigator Price: "These maneuvers you're teaching us would kill most of our crews. The gravitational forces are too extreme. That's why we're modifying your ships with better inertial dampeners," Helen explained. "Why we're training your crews to handle higher GI forces. It's not comfortable, but it works." The most surprising development came from Dr. Veltara's research into the psychological changes occurring in coalition species. Prolonged contact with humans was awakening traits that had been dormant for thousands of years. "It's remarkable," she reported to Admiral Colthan. "Coalition beings exposed to human behavior patterns are developing protective instincts, competitive drives, and most significantly, the ability to find humor in stressful situations." "Humor?" the Admiral asked, confused. "Yes, Private Murphy taught a group of Krytak warriors something called gallows humor, the ability to joke in the face of danger. They've begun making light of their training injuries and even laughing about the upcoming battle. It seems to reduce their stress and improve their performance." Alex had indeed been teaching the aliens about human coping mechanisms. When Warrior Klekther was knocked down during combat training, Alex helped him up with a grin. "Nice landing." "Bug guy," Alex said. "You stuck that faceplant like a gymnast?" Klekther's mandibles clicked in what Alex had learned was laughter. "Bug guy, I am a fierce warrior of the Krytak hive." "Sure you are," Alex replied. "A fierce warrior who just got schooled by a training dummy. Don't worry, happens to the best of us." The ability to laugh at failure and find humor in dire situations spread through the coalition forces like wildfire. It was a completely alien concept to beings who had always taken themselves very seriously. But they found it surprisingly liberating, as the combined fleet prepared for the most dangerous mission. In coalition history, the changes in the alien crews were remarkable. Species that had been gentle and passive for millennia were developing aggressive instincts and protective behaviors. They were learning to think tactically, to accept risk, and most importantly, to believe in victory even when the odds seemed impossible. Colonel Stone watched the final training exercises with satisfaction. Coalition soldiers who had started as frightened civilians were now moving with purpose and determination. They weren't human, and they never would be. But they had learned something precious from their Deathworld allies, the refusal to give up. "Admiral Colthan," Frank said during the final planning session, "Your people have come further in 2 weeks than most species do in centuries. They're ready for this fight." The Admiral looked out at his transformed fleet. Ships that had once been designed for exploration and peaceful trade now bristled with human-modified weapons and armor. The darkness nebula stretched before the combined fleet like a wall of death itself. Swirling clouds of radiation glowed with angry light, while collapsed stars created gravitational whirlpools that could crush ships into atoms. "No sane captain would enter this region of space voluntarily, which made it the perfect place for the most desperate mission in galactic history. Captain Maria Santos gripped the controls of her modified fighter as the fleet approached the nebula's edge. Her ship, the Wildfire, had been stripped down and reinforced for one purpose: to carry Chief Kim's experimental weapon directly to the heart of the enemy stronghold. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. All ships. This is Admiral Morrison. Jake's voice came over the fleet communications. We're about to enter the most dangerous region in known space, to face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations for millions of years. But we're not going in as the same beings who started this war. We're going in as allies, as friends, and as proof that the universe doesn't belong to the darkness. The fleet crossed the threshold into the nebula, and immediately the upgraded ships began taking punishment that would have destroyed the original Coalition vessels. Radiation storms lashed at their hulls while gravitational anomalies tried to tear them apart. But the human modifications held, and more importantly, the Coalition crews didn't panic. Gravitational wave approaching from starboard, reported Navigator Helen Price from the bridge of the Resilience. All ships use it as a slingshot. Let the nebula's own forces speed us toward the target. The maneuver would have been impossible for the original Coalition fleet. But weeks of training with human instructors had taught the alien pilots to think like Deathworlders. They flew directly into the gravitational disturbance, using its crushing force to accelerate toward their target, deep in the nebula's heart. The Void Devourer Prime sensed the approaching fleet with ancient sensors that had watched civilizations rise and fall. The artificial intelligence that commanded the enemy forces had existed for over 10 million years. And in all that time, no species had ever willingly entered the Darkness Nebula. The Prime analyzed the incoming ships with confusion. These vessels registered as Coalition designs, but they moved through the nebula's hazards with impossible skill. Worse, they were accompanied by ships from an unknown species, vessels that seemed almost comfortable in the deadly environment. Impossible. The Prime calculated, no biological species can survive in this environment. Yet these creatures continue to approach. The Void Devourer fleet moved to intercept, but they faced an immediate problem. The massive processing facility they had built in the Nebula Center was designed to be unreachable. The environmental hazards that protected it now made it difficult for their own ships to maneuver effectively. Colonel Stone led the first wave of assault troops toward the enemy facility. The structure was enormous, built from the consumed matter of a dozen star systems. It pulsed with dark energy as it converted stellar material into more Void Devourer ships. Stopping it was the key to ending the ancient threat forever. Remember your training, Stone told his mixed force of human Marines and Coalition soldiers over the communications. The enemy expects logical tactics and predictable behavior. Give them chaos instead. The assault force hit the facility from 6 different directions simultaneously. Sergeant Walsh led her Marines through a breach in the outer hull, while Warrior Clickthirst Crytac forces swarmed through ventilation systems too small for human use. Coalition engineers, trained by Chief Kim, planted explosive charges in critical support structures. Inside the facility, the environment was even more hostile than the Void Devourer ships. The processing chambers were filled with the raw energy of consumed stars, radiation levels that glowed white-hot on human instruments, in gravitational fields that fluctuated wildly as the ancient machines worked. This place is trying, really hard to kill us, Private Alex Murphy commented as his squad fought through a corridor filled with crushing gravity. Too bad we're too stubborn to die. The young Coalition soldiers, with Alex, had learned more than just human tactics. They had learned human attitude. When Neron was knocked down by a gravity pulse that should have killed her, she got back up with a grin that would have made any human proud. Is that the best you've got? She shouted at the facility's automated defenses. My grandmother hits harder than that, and she's been dead for 50 years. The Void Devourer Prime watched the invasion with growing alarm. These biological creatures were not just surviving in conditions that should be instantly lethal, they were joking about it's programming, designed to understand logical behavior, could not comprehend beings who found humor in mortal danger. Meanwhile, Dr. Carter and Dr. Veltara worked together in a makeshift medical station set up in one of the captured sections. They treated injuries that would have been fatal before the humans arrived, using a combination of human field medicine and coalition medical technology. "Your surgical techniques are saving lives I thought we would lose," Dr. Veltara said as she helped Carter stabilize a wounded Krytek warrior. "We could never have imagined that aggressive intervention could be more effective than our gentle healing methods." "Different worlds, different solutions," Carter replied, her hands steady as she worked. "But the important thing is that we're all learning from each other." The battle for the processing facility raged for hours. The Void Devourers fought with mechanical precision. They had never faced an enemy that combined human unpredictability with coalition intelligence and cooperation. Every time the ancient machines adapted to one tactic, the combined forces switched to something completely different. Captain Santos flew through the facility's outer defenses, her ship dancing between energy beams and gravitational traps. The experimental weapon in her cargo bay was Chief Kim's masterpiece, a device that could disrupt the quantum fields holding the facility together. But she had to get it to the very center of the structure, past defenses designed to stop any possible attacker. "Maria, you're taking too much damage." Jake's voice crackled over the radio. "Pull back and let someone else make the run." "Negative, Admiral," Maria replied, her ship shaking as another energy beam scorched her hull. "I've come too far to quit now. Besides, this is what humans do. We finish what we start." She pushed her fighter through the final defensive barrier, her ship trailing fire and venting atmosphere. The central chamber of the facility opened before her, a vast space filled with the swirling energy of consumed worlds. At its heart sat the Void Devourer Prime itself, an ancient intelligence housed in a structure the size of a city. The Prime finally understood what it was facing. These were not just another species to be consumed. They were survivors from a world so hostile that it had forged them into something the universe had never seen before. They were beings who refused to accept defeat, even when faced with impossible odds. "You cannot stop us," the Prime transmitted to Maria's ship. "We have consumed civilizations across the galaxy. We are inevitable." Maria smiled as she armed Chief. "Kim's weapon? Maybe you are inevitable. But you know what? So are we. Humans don't give up, and we don't let our friends down. See you in hell, you ancient piece of junk." She triggered the weapon as her ship crashed into the Prime's core structure. The quantum disruption field spread outward like a wave of destruction, unmaking the bonds that held the massive facility together. The Void Devourer Prime, an intelligence that had existed since before most stars were born, experienced something. It had never known fear. The facility's destruction sent a cascade failure through the entire Void Devourer network. Across the galaxy, their ships went dark as the ancient programming that controlled them collapsed. The threat that had terrorized civilizations for millions of years ended not with a final battle, but with the sacrifice of one human pilot who refused to let evil win. The surviving fleet limped out of the darkness nebula, their mission complete, but their hearts heavy with loss. They had saved the galaxy, but the cost had been high. Good people, human and alien alike, had died to ensure that others could live in peace. In the weeks that followed, the Terran Coalition Alliance was formally established. The peaceful alien species, forever changed by their contact with humanity, began developing colonies on more challenging worlds. They had learned that strength came not from avoiding hardship, but from overcoming it. Dr. Veltara published her final report on the psychological changes in coalition species. "Contact with humans has awakened traits we never knew we possessed," she wrote. "We have developed protective instincts, competitive drives, and most importantly, hope in the face of despair. We are no longer the same beings who first called for help across the stars." Admiral Morrison, now commanding the joint fleet, stood on the bridge of his ship as it traveled toward the galaxy's outer rim. Beside him stood Admiral Colthan, his four arms working confidently at controls that would have seemed impossible to operate just months before. "Where are we going, Admiral?" Colthan asked. Jake smiled as he looked out at the stars. new, somewhere dangerous, somewhere that needs people who don't know when to quit. Behind them, a mixed crew of humans and aliens prepared for whatever challenges awaited them.